Welcome, Hearties. We are here for another episode of Hearties Hotline. I'm one of your hosts, Sarah, the hawk-eyed Heartie. And you all know my co-host. I can't do it without laughing. You all know my co-host, the hooked Heartie, Cammie.
I'm not the unhooked Heartie this time. I'm allowed to be the hooked Heartie.
You're allowed. You're totally allowed.
Excellent.
We are here tonight to talk about season 3, episode 1, 2, or 3, however you want to look at it. It is the first episode of the season following the New Year's movie, which we reviewed last week. So it is called Troubled Hearts, and it sure started off with a lot of new directions for some characters.
Yeah, and causing a lot of troubled hearts for a lot of people.
I like how in a lot of the early episodes had the word hearts like in the titles.
Yeah.
It was kind of fun to see how, because you were like, oh, they're just coming up with fun ways to do it. And then you actually watch the episode and you're like, wow, that was like the perfect title.
That really does work. Yeah, they were trying every way they could do love, hearts, prelude to a kiss, all of that. Yeah,
there's some fun titles.
It's definitely true.
Yep. So what did you think of that opening scene of Elizabeth's new plans for herself this season?
I thought it was about time. I mean, she was supposed to be living on her own this whole time in the teacherage, which she burned down. And so, I mean, you've got all of season 1 and all of season 2 with her living with Abigail. And when Abigail moves out of the row house, she goes with her and moves into the cafe. So I think it's time for Elizabeth to have her own space. And it's the perfect way to do it because Clara is now living there. And it's been a little bit of time with Clara there. And now Cody has moved in. So yeah, it's getting crammed in there. And
I know. I mean, it looks like a big building, and we've heard them talk about there being a few bedrooms up there, but it would be tight.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if Elizabeth was either sharing with Clara or Abigail.
Right.
I know Jack was surprised, even though I didn't think he had any reason to be shocked or dismayed or worried. But he was. It really allows them to have some decent space. You know, if there's anything that showed us that they have no privacy as this thriving couple, it's the beginning of this episode.
Which was beautifully done. I loved the scene with Rosemary because it showed kind of the progression of their relationship. Like they're sort of friends now. She's comfortable coming to her to ask for support. And so there was that, there was that nice part of the progression, but then it also was like, you're not taking a hint. It's not a good
There was still the condescending stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Clara and Cody and Abigail all coming in, and then Bill comes in and interrupts their dinner, just
I will say, I thought he was going to just sit right down and join them. So I'm glad he didn't do that. He just took their food.
But yeah, it was really funny. To a romantic evening, one of these days. So yeah, I mean, she needs her own space, especially for lesson plans. And we find out that she wants to write a book. So
I'm pretty sure this is the first time that being a writer has come up specifically.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And looking back, I remember that when she first started talking about that, I was surprised because I thought I had known this character for a while and that hadn't come up. So I do remember that it wasn't like really early in the series.
Okay.
So I think that was kind of a new, and that happens. I mean, I'm a great example of that.
Yes, you are. So am I.
I mean, when I was really young, I wanted to be a writer when I grew up, but I never seriously considered it or really talked with people about it until you and I started talking about writing together. So I'm sure there were a few people that I mentioned my plans to that are like,
you're a what?
I had no idea that that was something you were interested in. So kind of another interesting little parallel to the Hope Valley world.
Yes, indeed.
Well, what I was going to say about Jack, I think it was tough to kind of pinpoint what his emotions were with that. He was definitely surprised and taken aback by it. And I liked that he went to Lee and kind of got that like brotherly like advice. Like, I'm kind of feeling
male
this.
Bonding, calm down talk.
He wasn't upset, but he was like, you know, should I be worried? You know, and I thought Lee handled it beautifully.
Yeah, especially for an old confirmed bachelor.
Yeah.
So,
and I thought his explanation was really good. Like, it's a good stepping stone. It's her setting down roots. It's her.
It's a good sign.
It's a good sign that she wants to be here, that she wants to be here permanently.
It's called nesting.
And that was one of my favorites. Lee had some amazing lines in this episode. Amazing. And I want to say, is this the first episode that we truly saw, like, I mean, okay, in the movie there was a lot, but the banter between Rosemary and Lee, the true on back and forth.
Well, Lee was getting a lot put on him in this episode by a certain somebody, that's for sure.
But I especially loved when she said something to him about, was that in this episode or the last one, where she said that he was the one in charge? He was like, am I?
Oh, you're the boss. That was this episode, because she gave Mr. Butterfield the rest of the day off. What are you doing? Well, I told him it was your idea. You are the boss. Sometimes I wonder, you know. Yeah. The line that I loved with Lee was, be patient and buy her a nice housewarming gift. And that's exactly what Jack did. Mm-hmm. And it went off very, very well. And very I think, smooth. Yeah, and I think that is one thing that I have really appreciated over the years of rewatching, is this was the first time that Jack went to Lee for advice, took it, did it, and it came off without a hitch.
They're learning from their mistakes.
Right. I mean, but when he was talking about Charles proposing, he was just kind of venting. And Lee said, you know, he was kind of validating his feeling, like, if he proposes to me, then I would definitely have decked him, you know. But he said, oh, Jack, Elizabeth only has eyes for you. But that didn't fully convince him. You know, yes. Elizabeth kind of took care of that, which she should have. Yes. But here, Lee just acted like a great big brother. And he said, okay, listen, kid, it's a good thing, okay? She's putting down roots. She's nesting. Just be patient and buy her a nice housewarming gift. I think that Jack was probably nervous because if she rented her own home, then she wouldn't want to marry him and move into the home that he's building. That would be what I think would be his issue.
Right. So, I mean, let's lay this out. He was just going to propose very recently.
Yeah.
Then there was a very traumatic experience with someone he rivals. And then, even though they're over that, she did make these comments about taking their time. And then the next thing he knows,
she said not too cautiously.
But like, so that's in his mind. And then he turns around and he starts thinking, okay, we're gonna move forward. I'm gonna look at this land. I'm gonna ask Lee for a quote on lumber and have all these blueprints, which he's apparently drawn up himself.
Either he's done it or Lee's done it.
The way he was showing the plans to Lee looked like he'd just seen it for the first time. And he is a artist, so he
can do it.
Probably drew something up.
Yeah.
And then he turns around and here she is renting a place for herself to move into, which he was not expecting. So yes, I totally see what you're saying. I think he was like, oh, like, am I moving in the wrong? Like, is this not what comes next?
But I think the big thing is that she's renting a house. She didn't buy one. She didn't have one built. So she's putting down the roots, but she can still go.
Yes, agreed. Oh, goodness. But she also doesn't want any help.
Okay, now this is ridiculous to me. I'm sorry, but there is a difference between letting someone help you and letting someone do everything for you. And if you want one person who does not know a thing about carpentry or a thing about remodeling or a thing about anything except teaching
and burning down buildings.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
and burning food.
She was doing great, but it probably took 5 times longer than if she would have said, okay, I'll do this job, you do this job. Then if she had any...
Or teach me how to do these.
Or teach me how to do it, and we can do it together. Yeah, I applaud her for wanting to do it herself, but on the other hand, it would have gotten the place done faster, and it would have been a lot easier for them to work together. You know, she didn't have to just hold the nails. She could be doing the work, like refinishing the floors. You know, he was talking about doing varnish. That's a big floor.
Yeah.
You know, you start at that corner, I'll start at this corner, and we'll meet in the middle. There's nothing wrong with that. See, so
exactly. Yeah, I'm not sure that I totally saw her full process with that. But yeah, yes, just like you said, I applaud her desire to take care of herself. And I'm sure part of that has to do with everything that led up to season 3, you know, learning to take care of herself, proving that she's a Hope Valley woman and not the upper crust from Hamilton.
And she can pump water on her own.
She certainly can. But, you know, if there's a spider, that...
Keep your man busy so he won't be in a tizzy. I read Rosemary's column too.
That might be, it's got to be like my top 5 lines from the whole season. It was funny enough when Rosemary said it, but when the same words come out of Jack's mouth a few minutes later, it literally just had me floored. The first time I watched it, I was laughing so hard.
Well, and the look of shock on her face, like, oh, he got me.
Well, obviously that's what she was having to do with wood chopping also. It wasn't just the spider. Like, she was like finding jobs for him to do. Speaking of which, if she wants to be so self-sufficient out on the frontier, why have we not seen Elizabeth chopping wood?
I don't know, but it's a whole lot more fun watching Jack chop wood. So let's not even go there.
I agree, but I'm surprised.
Okay, fair enough. Maybe she knows her limits. She knows that she just does not have the upper body strength to try to chop wood. So let him do that. It's not actually working on the house, right?
Exactly.
It's a different job.
Totally fine. Speaking of Rosemary, she was not working on her column very much this episode.
But she was so busy with it.
So busy. Yeah. What did you think of her nesting?
I think she was nesting in the wrong place.
Trying to find a nest. Yes. Take over a nest.
Just wait and see what I'm doing with your office. Okay. Wait, what are you doing in my office? What is she doing in my office? You know?
I love
and when Rosemary's coming, I mean, this is his girlfriend coming up. And Jack tries to go away. He's like, no, stay safe.
No. You're not going anywhere. Save me. But she's telling his workers where to clean.
Silly name for a saw.
He's redoing his office in pinks.
What? No, red or maroon.
They're all darker versions of pink.
30 yards of maroon velour. How can you use that much fabric in that small of a room?
I have no idea.
Did you catch who was serving refreshments to the boys at the mill?
I got distracted right at that second. And so I heard it, but I forget who it was. Remind me.
So she said it was Mrs. Weiss, which is Opal's mother, correct?
Oh, yes.
But we haven't met Opal yet.
No, we meet her in the next episode. Yeah, a time to speak is next. So, and that's when they go camping. And there are more fires lit than the campfire. Oh wait, wrong episode. Nope.
Calm down. So we get to see Hickam following her around like a puppy dog some more.
Again, poor guy.
I will say though, my kids were watching this with me when I was taking notes, and the second that he showed up on screen in Lee's office, I think was the first time we saw him.
Yeah.
And my oldest started out going, every scene with Hickam is awesome.
Oh, Ben, did you hear that? I love it. That's awesome.
I was so excited to see him. And I was just like, yes, you are right. Every scene with Hickam is pretty awesome.
It's pretty awesome. That's precious.
We get to see the blueprints for the first time of the infamous Hope Valley Theater that has yet to come.
Which I may be a little biased here, but I would love to see that come.
I'd love to see that come. I feel like it's just one of those things that it has to come. Like it hasn't come to be yet. So I know the show will still go on because we haven't seen that yet. That's something that has to happen. It's like a Hope Valley bucket list. Like the show can't end until these things have happened someday.
I'm gonna laugh so hard at your panic attack if they build the theater in season 10, episode 6 or something like that.
I don't mean it needs to end after that happens. I just mean like you can't end it without that. Like that will always be on the back of all the Hearties' minds. Like, but what about the theater? Someday.
But I do love how she says, "You're making my dreams come true." And she said, "No one has ever done this for me before, and because no one has ever felt about you the way I do." Mm-hmm. That was the one mention of their feelings for each other. You realize that obviously Rosemary is getting quite comfortable in their relationship, but this is the one time that you hear some of the affection, and yes. It's the one time in the episode, and it's short, but it's very, very sweet. And those are moments that I really cherish, especially when they're constantly doing the back and forth. When they take a moment to just say, "This is why we're together. This is why I love you. This is what I'm doing to show you I love you." I just then the end of season 3 doesn't seem to come out of thin air. Oh, whoops! What did I just say? I didn't say anything.
Kevin is so good with the facial expressions. I mean, we've talked about his ability to like do the nonverbal comedy routines and everything. He's very good at that, just indirect presence, right? Yes. On camera. And I think that often you talk about it because of his big expressions during Rosemary's antics, but just the way he carried himself in a scene like that, where he went from like trying to calm her down about stuff to such a sweet line where they're not quite ready to say I love you yet, but getting pretty close.
Yeah, it's there.
But the look on his face when he says how much he cares for her. I mean, he conveys a lot with his expressions.
He does. That's why we love him.
One of many reasons.
One of many. So I want to point out something. Nora is thinking about moving to Hope Valley permanently to be with Henry. And she'll be back in a month or so because she has to go home and tie up some loose ends first. But if Hope Valley is going to be her home, she needs to apologize to Abigail Stanton, which I 100% applaud, but it didn't happen. She never did it. I was like, wait a minute, Nora, aren't you supposed to say something to Abigail?
I mean, there's a chance it happened off screen, but
yeah, I want validation. I mean, I am not 100% certain that it doesn't happen in a different episode, but I could be wrong. Like,
but I know she comes back.
Yeah, she comes back,
but we see her again.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to watch extra carefully when she comes back to see if it happens.
It's not like we could miss Nora. She is a big presence when she's in a scene.
A very big presence, yeah. But she has gotten toned down quite a bit. So she doesn't rival Rosemary anymore.
So I want to just really quick, we're talking about Nora and Gowan. There was a detail that they shared. So when he first met her, it was on his first day at the mining company. I would really like to work this timeline out someday. Like,
oh gosh, just not here, right?
Well, no, not right here today. But when they were talking in that scene, I was like trying to piece it together. And I'm like, I just don't see a timeline where she met some other guy who she got pregnant with Martin with, who also left her mysteriously and suspiciously.
No, it had to be him. It had to be him.
I just feel like it's just so inconvenient to have it not mean anything. I realize it could mean nothing. I know that like there's red herrings all the time in this kind of stuff because you have to have stuff to throw you off. But I'm just like, where in the time he worked for the mining company and
too much adds up. Yeah.
With just the wording of how he left her like high and dry. Yeah. And just the depth in which he and Bill have it out for each other.
Yeah. No, 100%. I'm convinced that he is Martin's father.
Yeah. Yeah. That just always haunts me every time there's like a mention of that history, is I'm always just like, oh, I want to know.
Okay, so before Sarah has a conniption, let's move on to a different kid, shall we?
All right.
Well, he's blonde.
Okay.
He wants to get good at baseball, but he has an affinity for showing up late. You know, I seem to remember that this child's last words in a New Year's wish was, cross my heart, I'll do just what I'm told. To quote Mary Poppins, oh, that's a pie crust promised, easily made, easily broken. So, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know so much that he has an affinity for being late as much as he's been on his own for so long.
Yeah, he's not used to, well, I mean, he had to follow orders at the home, but he balked against the orders. So that's why they ran away.
Well, and he had no reason to follow them. Like there was he didn't have anybody that he was trying to make proud of him or, show what he could do. And now he's trying to find that balance. And he's also dealing with loss and grief. And now he's all alone without his sister, who's basically been the only person that's been a constant for him.
Yeah.
not only is she not there, he's worried about her because she's not helping.
And he has no friends at school.
And they're teasing him quite a bit. Robert. Oh.
Robert.
Cute little tiny Robert, though. Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh. The pre-adolescent voice.
Like, you're so short. He's so tall now.
I know. He's huge now. So they're both huge now. I have seen some pictures of Carter online. He's huge.
So yeah, he's showing up late to school
constantly
and making excuses, trying to blame Abigail for it. She said I could play ball before school. Yeah, before
school.
That would imply up until school starts.
He's not doing his homework.
No. Very avoidant of that. And
getting in fights.
I mean, to be fair, I can see why he's getting upset, because he's being bullied basically, and he's being teased, and not even about silly childish stuff, like about his parents being dead. Like, yeah,
that's just
not cool. That's just not cool. That shouldn't be happening anywhere.
I know we're not supposed to do spoilers, but I love that these two become best friends later on, because it shows what can happen when you let go of spite.
Yeah, but also note when you have nurturing adults around you that are helping to move you past those instincts, because, like, yes, kids will be kids. I don't like to say that boys will be boys, like they said in the show, but kids will be kids. They'll act out, they'll do stuff, but they need guidance.
Yeah.
You know, and they need to know when you're going too far, when the line has been crossed. And it was fitting that Jack was the one to catch that fight in progress and be, you know, able to have that insight. I know he doesn't go into it until later in this episode with Cody, with his personal perspective, but he still, I think he was really needing that, you know, male role model to acknowledge his feelings, but also kind of be a buddy, be a confidant, not just say, I'm going to run to your adopted mom here and tell on you, but I'm here to look out for you, but also don't do it again.
Quit.
Yeah, this is not okay.
But the vase.
I know.
The casualty of the war of the heart was the
I know, right? Like, that was a really tough scene to get through, because you've got here this beautiful, perfect gift that Jack has given Elizabeth.
With such heart. I mean,
and then gorgeous flowers have been added to it, which, you know, were probably from him as well.
Okay, can we just take a second to talk about that scene, because it's so fast, but there's something that happens so beautifully in there.
There's several things. What are you? Yeah.
But so he gives her the vase, which is gorgeous, and it's a housewarming gift, just like Lee said he should do. It's a perfect gesture of welcoming her into her home and showing that he is okay with it. Mm-hmm. And then he says, now I just need to get you some flowers, which means another gift is coming. So romantic, so sweet. And then she says, it's perfect just the way it is, telling him, I don't need anything else. This alone is beautiful. And then he tops it and says, just like you. I mean, that is a beautiful scene.
Yes.
And it really shows how far they've come.
I would also add, I love how it was down below and hidden. And they somehow managed to, like, sneak it in.
And under this beautiful scarf.
And I'm like, it's a crystal vase. How did you carry that you under the desk? And it didn't fall and break. Like, it was just such a great, like, reveal and everything. Oh,
yeah.
So cute.
It was a fantastic reveal. And then it died. Ugh, the vase died.
Oh, so what a dynamic between Elizabeth and Abigail in this episode, because
They're arguing.
Like first time we've really seen that too much, but also like, oh gosh, look what Abigail's going through in this episode. I mean, this season, but this episode, she's got a child in her care again that she's deeply bonded to already. And I mean, she's got to be having flashbacks of her own son who she's lost.
Yeah.
You know,
especially with Clara in the house too.
Especially with Clara in the house, who is getting asked to go for walks with some new guy right in front of her. Like her emotions have got to be all over the place.
Well, let's not forget that Frank has given her the cold shoulder, and he's been the one that she can turn to.
You've got all this other stuff, but I mean, just surrounding her memories of Peter. She's trying to let Clara make adult decisions and move on, which she wants her to, but that's still got to be a hard thing for a mother.
Especially because she just found her.
Mm-hmm. And then also dealing with like the possibility of being kind of a mom again.
Yeah.
And wanting to do everything you can to protect this child because you lost your last child. I mean, I just can't even imagine the emotional pull that would have. So I totally understand why she was trying to protect him in the way she was from
But
Elizabeth.
You agree that she was being too easy on him.
I don't know if too easy is the words I would use, but I liked the way Elizabeth said, she kind of countered when Abigail said that, you think I'm being too easy on him. I don't think you're doing him any favors. I don't think, it's not what's best for him, even though it totally makes sense. And I can't really imagine her doing something different given the situation. But it still probably was not what was best for him to move forward. It might have been necessary for him to bond with her at the very beginning.
Maybe.
But he wasn't going to move forward if that's the way it continued. And
because he would just know her as a pushover.
Right. But at the same time, if she'd been very strict, on the other hand, it might have made it harder for them to connect.
Yeah, that's why you got to find the happy medium.
Yeah. Oh, parenting, it's so much fun.
Isn't it?
Finding that balance every day.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, he's playing ball in the house. And then Elizabeth asks him about his essay, which he hasn't started yet.
And it's due tomorrow.
And it's already the replacement essay that replaced the essay he didn't do that he was assigned before.
And he got told how many times? About 4 to not play ball in the house and to help them. He came over to help paint. So put the dang glove down and help.
Also, though, a really interesting callback because she talked about how Peter had played ball in the house and broken something and how she wished she could go back and let him break as many windows.
It wasn't her vase.
I know, right? Like, but it's just interesting, like, you can imagine that she was probably in her head just like, now here I am yelling at my kid the same.
She didn't yell at him. I thought all 3 of them were fairly calm given that he broke that beautiful vase. I thought they were all very calm.
That's true.
But while we're there, I have to put in some bonus points for Dan's acting right here.
Oh,
because he was feeling every feeling over again from losing his father.
yes.
And it was beautiful.
And it was the only thing that would get through to Cody.
Yeah.
I mean, that he was not going to listen to somebody who hadn't been through what he's been through.
No.
Nobody understands me.
He said, you don't know anything. I'm like, yeah, I do. And you're going to listen. But that scene where he is talking to him about his father and Oh, it's just, it is so beautiful. And then he tells him how he can move on without forgetting him. And then the next time you see them together, Cody's on a horse and they're reciting the poem together. It's just, it's precious and it's warm and heartfelt, and you know everything's gonna be okay with Cody.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I will take that a step further. I think that was very cathartic for Jack.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Jack needed to, I mean, who knows how much he shared with anybody. He doesn't even like sharing his grief with Elizabeth because he doesn't want to burden her.
Well, that's what I was just going to say is in the last episode in the New Year's movie, he was sharing some beautiful moments with her about how he felt when his father died. And it was hard for him. And then he felt like he needed to move on because almost because that was something that she didn't have to deal with.
Yeah.
And I think for him to connect with someone who has been through that situation,
it was good for him.
It wasn't, he didn't feel like I'm burdening somebody else to tell them how my dad died.
Yeah.
Because he knows that that person knows what it's like to lose a dad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that bonding with somebody that's shared a similar tragic experience. I mean, as awful as that is, right? It really helps people to be able to know that they are not alone and to be able to just voice those feelings without feeling like you're being the downer. Like, I'm just sharing something that I know that you reciprocate.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just lovely.
and both of them played the scene beautifully. Both Carter and Dan that was a really well done scene.
It was a good scene, especially because Carter was such a new actor at the time.
Mm-hmm. And so young. I mean,
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Often get really meaty scenes with all the emotions.
Yeah.
With younger children, with younger actors.
He played that anger really, really well. And then he really listened. He mm-hmm. really listened as Jack was telling him how to handle it.
Yeah. That's a scene I always remember from season 3 because it just had that feeling of like, it was just so well put together. Like it just all of the different scenes from the episode came together. I loved the scene also with Bill showing Cody how to
showing Cody how to throw.
I thought that was a great scene for Bill because he came out of the jail kind of mad because you could hear the pounding on the wall and didn't know what was going on. You could see he was ready to yell at whoever was making that racket.
Yeah, because he's all worked up about the Garrison gang.
And even still, if it had been any other kid, I think he still would have been like scram or so, you know. But something tells me that's a word Bill would use.
Yeah.
But he saw that it was him and he knows the history and he knows, you know, what's been going on. And he knows Abigail and he has that history with her. So he immediately went to what he knew he could help with. And that was a really good Bill scene. I really enjoyed that.
Was a good Bill scene. Yeah, it showed one of the softer sides of him, especially since we haven't been able to trust Bill a whole lot lately. And we're just finding out that, yes, he truly is one of the good guys. And then while we're on Bill, that final Bill scene, whoa, that threw us for a loop, didn't it?
Well, it threw Abigail for a loop.
Yeah. But I mean, I understand her hesitation given their history, but really and truly, are you gonna take Humphreys over Bill? Come on.
And she wasn't, and she knew that, but she still wanted, I think she wanted to make sure that Bill was aware that this does not cancel out the feelings of distrust that she's already expressed to him. Yeah. And I think she wanted to make sure he wasn't going into this thinking this just cleared the slate and that now everything's perfect. I mean, he did say, "Are we good?" and they shook hands, but I think she just needed to be like, okay, but I want you to know I'm not thrilled about this.
Yeah. But by the end of the scene, she seemed okay, especially when he said that he was going to be a silent partner. He wasn't going to interfere. He wasn't going to get in the way. He wasn't going to cause trouble. He just...
Yeah. Again, no spoilers, but he also said he wasn't going to cook and that he didn't know how to cook, which...
Not with that stove.
Okay.
It took him 10 minutes to light that stove. But at that point, Abigail appreciates the help. She wants the help. So
I'm just saying, it was a little misleading when all of a sudden he's cooking in later episodes. I was like, I thought he said
she wanted help.
Oh, goodness. It is kind of funny that he's all like, I really like the food here. And then he's all like, and now I'm going to make it for myself.
I'm going to enjoy owning this place almost as much as I enjoy eating here.
So funny.
I think that brings us to the other man in Abigail's life, the one who is brr.
Well, it didn't start out that way, but it got a little cold, didn't it?
Yeah, a cold front came through and it landed on Frank's shoulder. But it's not
Frank.
his fault.
Or should we say Matt?
Or maybe it blew in with Jesse. At this point, I still don't like Jesse. So
no, it took me quite a while to warm up to Jesse. I mean, he was very sweet in this episode to Clara.
Yeah, to Clara.
But I was still like scared to death because poor Clara's history. And so you're like, oh, why is she falling for this guy?
Yeah, no, don't do it.
Yeah. With the entrance of, was it Sunny?
Yeah.
Sunny and Jake Garrison.
Yeah.
When they showed up, at least I finally got the impression that Jesse was being pressured into at least part of what he's been doing.
Oh, that Jesse wasn't doing all the pressure.
He wasn't like the leader who's trying to get him back into the gang. He clearly was like, this guy's basically threatening him that
it's a pawn.
You have to bring me Matt Landry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so at that point, at least I was like, okay, well, at least he's not like the mastermind.
That's helpful.
It's a little helpful.
But yeah, it's really sad because Frank asks Abigail to go on a walk with him because she works too much.
Nice slow walk.
A nice slow walk. And I love how Abigail, because she's Abigail and she's straightforward. I love how she came right out and said, Frank, I'm confused. You said you wanted to catch up, so she told him straight out. He still avoided her. But, and it was really sad when she told Elizabeth, I thought something was happening between us.
Yeah. Also, when Abigail was talking to Frank and she said, I know you're keeping something from me. And whatever it is, I've been through worse.
You don't know that.
She probably hasn't. It's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. You've never been involved with a thief.
Yeah, you haven't had your face on a wanted poster before.
No.
You haven't spent time in Granville, which at that point, she knew he had been on the wrong side of the law, but did she know did she know he'd been in prison?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, she did know that he had been in prison by that point.
So then it shouldn't have shocked her so much to see the wanted poster.
Well,
other than the name, like that, I would be like, what?
There's a difference between being in jail and being a fugitive. Because
he's not a fugitive now. That was an old wanted poster, right?
Not now, but he was that bad at one point that he broke the law so many times. And he was known and wanted. That he was wanted. Yeah. So I think that's the big thing.
Yeah. Oh.
But I mean, what a way to end, because we see Jesse receive the wanted poster. I'm guessing that Jake Garrison sent it to him. We don't find out for sure who did.
It had to be one of the gang. Yeah.
Yeah. So we see Jesse receive the wanted poster when Tom delivered it. And then now we see at the end of this episode, it's nailed to the cafe. And
which is clearly a message. Yeah.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, that might not have been Jesse. Like we talk about it like it's Jesse, but these other guys have shown up. It could have been Garrison.
Maybe, but no, I say it was Jesse.
Yeah.
Because he looked a little too happy to receive that wanted poster. He was going to use it.
Yeah. It's, I mean, obviously we know Jesse ends up not being a horrid person.
As bad.
But he's, you know, he's young and he's impressionable, and he had looked up to Frank. He had looked up a lot to Frank. Frank did kind of, he didn't raise him, but he was a strong role model in his life.
A mentor.
And he doesn't have anything else. He doesn't have family to go back to. He doesn't have a home, really. And so what are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You know, here now you've got these people that are offering you money to do this work with them, and they're also threatening you if you don't. So, tough position.
Very tough.
But speaking of Garrison, we find out a little bit about his history, why Bill doesn't like him, which I had forgotten about that because it's been a little while since I'd seen season 3. I had forgotten a little bit about that history of his friend. Was it
Carl Benson?
Who had died in the bank robbery. And then there was also the connection to dear old Silas Ramsey.
Oh, poor Silas.
Who it comes out this episode has been killed while he was
in a stagecoach robbery.
Right. And he was traveling. This was something that popped in my brain as I'm listening to this. He was traveling as a salesman because Gowan ousted him from the mayor job with threats and
blackmail.
So in a way, Gowan is the reason that Silas was killed.
Add him to the list.
It's really stacking up against Henry.
Although
Cody has no ill will towards him. She's defending Gowan through this episode.
Don't know him like I do. What the heck?
And I'm like, isn't he kind of why your husband? Like, I get that you weren't.
Maybe she doesn't know.
Well, she might not know all those details. That's true.
He might not know those details because Silas doesn't strike me as the kind of person who would tell his wife that he's under Henry Gowan's thumb.
So there's two things. One is clearly it wasn't a very loving marriage.
Yeah.
We get that opinion.
I don't wish to speak ill of the dead, but we both know my husband was no saint.
So there's that. But I do think there was a line, I'm going to have to go back and look for it in season 2, when Dottie approached Henry for a job, that led me to believe she kind of knew the history there between the two of them. But I could be wrong, and it could have been something else that they were referring to as well. But yeah, so poor Dottie is a widow now, and apparently Bill's going to help look into that because secretly it seems he's thinking that a past criminal he was after for a friend of his dying has something to do with this as well.
Can I just say, totally random thought, but in this scene, Molly was killing it in that blue outfit. That was the most gorgeous outfit ever. Johanna, you knocked it out of the park with that.
Yes.
Well, your costume designer did, but you wore it so well.
It was a beautiful color and a beautiful, just with her red hair, of course. I was struck by the fact that, and this is something like that they do really well in the show, is so Silas passed away. Dottie traveled to the funeral, which apparently is what happens. We see in some other episodes when other people leave us. It's apparently we just travel far away to have these services. But what was interesting is that her friends met her when she came back, and even Molly was dressed kind of in a grieving outfit.
With the hat and the veil over her face.
And everything. And maybe she had gone with her, but it didn't appear. They acted as if she had just come back by herself. And so that struck me, that kind of like camaraderie that like, I didn't really know the man that well, and I didn't go to the service, but I'm greeting the widow. And so I'm going to also,
they all know what it's like to lose a husband.
Yeah.
So they want to help her through.
Yeah. Mm.
Kind of a bleak point to leave an episode, but we were left at a bleak point.
There was a lot of uncertainty and just kind of, I don't want to say melancholy, but that word comes to mind. Like you end it with this
Suspense.
kind of pit in your stomach, like, oh.
Yeah, like something drops into the pit of your stomach. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And so that really was kind of how the episode ended, and how you're left kind of wondering, like, where can we go from here on many of these storylines. Obviously not all of them were in the negative. We saw Elizabeth happily moving into a new place and writing lovely letters to her parents, and I love that they were showing her writing like multiple times. Usually we only see it at the very beginning of an episode, maybe at the very end, and it was kind of, there were a couple times in here, and so there were some really, really nice happy aspects obviously of the show. Everything wasn't drawn out. There were some things that were kind of tied up in this episode, but several things were, how did we call it? There were several troubled hearts.
There were several troubled hearts, that's for sure. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens.
I guess we will. Well, Hearties, there you have it. That is Troubled Hearts, season 3, episode 3, we're going with. And
it's episode 1 if you count it as the season premiere. It's episode 2 if you count New Year's Wish as 1 episode. And then it's episode 3 if you count New Year's Wish as 2 episodes. There you go.
Because it was 2 hours. Yeah. Glad we cleared that up for you.
Yeah.
We will be back here next time reviewing the next episode, where we will have about 4 hours worth of content for you of Cammie gushing over the campfire scene.
Bring your fans and oxygen tanks, people. You'll need them.
Bring your fans and oxygen tanks. One of many lovely campfire scenes from When Calls the Heart, but definitely at the top of most people's campfire lists. That's something all Hearties do, right? We all have a list of campfire scenes.
100%.
And a list of wood chopping scenes, and those, yeah. So, so we will go over those next week. So anyway, this is Sarah and Cammie. We are signing off, and we will see you next week. Bye, Hearties.